Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I hope everybody is recovering from a very wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I'm going to be reading a few more articles today. The next couple of ones that I go through are going to be about ancient civilizations. Okay, the first one is dated 1926. Ancient America had great genius. More than 3,500 years ago, there lived on the American continent a great scientist, a genius, who made startling discoveries and formulated important principles in mathematics and astronomy that antedated by centuries the first attempts of the fathers of our modern science to peer beyond the veil that shrouded them from knowledge of their world. No one knows the name of this wonderful ancient savant. It may remain forever a mystery. Maybe Enki? His fame, though, is made everlasting by his amazing work, the importance of which was discovered recently by Dr. Herbert J. Spinden, distinguished archaeologist of Harvard University. By deciphering inscriptions on ruined temples and crumbling stone houses found in Guatemala and Honduras, Dr. Spinden has proved definitely, says Popular Science Monthly, that the Mayas who built them were a highly cultured, civilized people, that these people inherited the western inhabited the Western Hemisphere centuries before Christopher Columbus's time has been known, of course, but it remained for Dr. Spinden to fix definitely the time at which these early Americans reached their highest state of culture, which was in the 7th century after Christ. And now he has finally succeeded in checking up the Venus calendar of the ancient Mayas with the true astronomical positions of the planet Venus in the 6th century before the Christian era. These latest investigations prove that the mysterious unknown scientists developed, by abstruse mathematical calculations and observation of astronomical phenomena, a system for measuring the passage of time that is more accurate than any other method ever evolved. In fact, this amazing man was the constructor of a machine for timekeeping. That's interesting. That worked without error for almost 2,000 years. This marvelous machine was destroyed during the Spanish Inquisition, of course. We'll never see it, unfortunately. Dr. Spinden's discovery makes it possible to translate the dates on the ancient inscriptions into the Gregorian calendar we use today. All of these records show vaguely, yet unmistakably, the influence of the great man whom Dr. Spinden calls a figure as grand and mysterious as Zoroaster or Buddha at the beginning of history in Persia or India. So, a timekeeping machine that worked without error for almost 2,000 years. That's freaking crazy. Okay, so the next one is from 1926 as well. Found the submerged Mayan city in the Guatemala jungle. Okay. I know I'm a slow talker, reader, so bear with me. I'll try to skip through some parts if I can. All right, let's get up here. Another of the centers of ancient civilization has been discovered. Another great field of archaeological research has been opened up for scientists. The discovery, strangely enough, was made by an artist, Max Vollenberg, who arrived recently in New York City after 15 years spent in the wilds of Guatemala and Mexico. Mr. Vollenberg, who is a painter of international repute, a man noted for the delicate exotic beauty of his canvases, wandered through the jungles of Guatemala, where few white men had ever been. In search of subjects which might lend themselves to his pictures, he stumbled upon the site of an ancient Mayan or pre-Mayan metropolis, which, by some catastrophe of nature, had been engulfed by a rushing river and is now submerged in a great lake. As he made his way through the tropical forests, he came to this beautiful lake. His Indian guides told him the wonderful legends of a city that once stood where the glistening green waters now flow. They said that at Easter time, anyone rowing on the lake could hear the bells tolling in the towers of the submerged temples below. They related the story of a beautiful white princess who floats over the lake in a canoe in the moonlight, beckoning any young man passing nearby to his death beneath the waves, just as the Lorelei of the River Rhine summoned the youth to destruction by their siren songs. Intrigued by these tales, the artist had himself rowed out to an island in the center of the lake, much against the wishes of his guides, who were filled with superstitious fear of the enchantments which it was reputed to be surrounded. There the explorer found carved figures, plainly Mayan in character, and a carefully made roadway paved with stones, leading up to a pyramid. There was a beautiful stone tablet, or stela, engraved with characters and figures of some of the warriors who must have played their parts on earth at least 20 centuries ago. A careful examination of these figures and designs, Mr. Vollenberg believes, may unearth the story which lies behind the vast jumble of carved heads, arms, and legs which he found on the island. That there is some deep significance in the monument or pyramid found there is evidence from its position and the skill of its workmanship. A study of the surrounding country seemed to indicate that the legend of the flooding of the ancient city was true. The Rio Lempe having evidently been deflected from its former bed by some ancient volcanic action, many of which take place in the neighborhood, and flowed down over the walls and spires of the doomed city and formed what is now the lake. The island appears only in dry weather, the natives inform the artist, the time during which he was fortunate enough to visit it. As he traveled further westward, Mr. Vollenberg found other fine carvings, apparently belonging to the earliest period of Mayan art or preceding it. The statues and carvings were usually found in the midst of coffee plantations, and the planters showed no interest or concerns about the strange indications of an ancient civilization which were scattered through their fields. If any excavation is to be carried on here, the artist states, it will be necessary first to purchase the land, for the planters will tolerate no molestation of their precious and to them all-important crop. In one place, ancient circle stones were found being used by the natives as borders for their springs. These stones had originally stood in certain parts of walls, it is believed, and were used by the chiefs and princes of the olden days for a game like putting the shot or throwing small rounded stones through the openings. A similar game is still played by the Basques of Europe. That's interesting. Um, if you know anything about the Basques, which may simplify the identification of circle stones and round rocks found in Guatemala. Among the new types of carved heads found by the artist was one so grotesque as to resemble the figures which the Alaskan Indians carve on their totem poles. It was evidently a near likeness of some fabulous animal with crocodile jaws and boar tusks. The carving indicates a very ancient period of Mayan art, or possibly an earlier civilization, of which archaeologists archae, archae, are not now familiar. Up to this time, it has been generally believed by scholars that all ruins of ancient cities would be found on the eastern seaboard only, but the discoveries of Max Vollenberg seem to indicate that a great field of research and excavation has been overlooked. Here may be another of those mystic civilizations of antiquity which have startled the world when discovered by the skill of their engineers and the beauty of their carvings and statuary. So that's a picture of the monster. And I guess that's the guy there involved in some kind of battle. And then this chick over here, or guy, reminds me of that one thing. Where did I see that? And she has like those big round things right here, like on Star Wars. I don't know. If anybody knows, please let me know. Okay, the next one is 1926 as well. This will be the last one, but there's two articles. Brings bones from Sahara. Expedition under Count de Prorock also recovers precious stones. Tells of strange old white race. Okay, let me blow that up. Man, those coats were expensive back then. Look at that, 85 and 145. It's like today's prices. All right, here we go. Okay, tales of strange old white race. Two skeletons of ancient Egyptian nobles, a necklace that one of them wore centuries ago, 300 precious and semi-precious stones, and 14 bracelets were brought in from the Sahara Desert by Count Byron de Prorec and W. Bradley Tyrrell of the Franco-American expedition. They arrived on the United States liner Leviathan, which is one of my words, if you watch my other videos about the words I've been getting, with the Countess de Prorock, formerly Miss Alice Kenny, of 820 Fifth Avenue, says the New York Herald Tribune. A prepared report of the excavating work was given out by the party. It said, this expedition, under the leadership of Maurice Ryegrass and Count de Prorock, officially left Tugert, the last outpost of civilization in the Sahara, in 3 especially constructed 6-wheeled motor cars, October 17th, and returned December 1st, after a hazardous but successful expedition into the heart of the Sahara. Co-operating in the Franco-American expedition was the Algerian government, the University of Algiers, the Logan Museum of Benoit College, Wisconsin, and the Archaeological Society of Washington. The expedition was organized for archaeological and geographic investigation in what has been considered virgin territory. The personnel consisted of Count de Prorock of Parles in New York, Governor Maurice Ryegrass of the Department in Tabasso, Algeria, blah, 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 blah. The outstanding achievements of this expedition were 1. The establishment definitely of the ancient trade routes between Carthage and the desert. 2. A most comprehensive ethnographic study of the Tuaregs, that interesting and mysterious race, descendants of the white Berbers, and closely related to the rifts of Morocco. This study included hundreds of feet of motion pictures, giving the complete life of the nomadic shepherds of the valley of the Hogar. Number 3. Perhaps the crowning achievement was the discovery and opening of the tomb of Tin Hinan, semi-legendary ancestress of all the Tuaregs. From this great edifice has been brought back to civilization hundreds of bead ornaments, cornelian, agate, turquoise, and pure gold. The complete skeleton was removed, carefully packed, and brought to Paris, and is now being reconstructed and studied in the Institute of Anthropology. The most remarkable find in this great tomb was a stone Venus about 6 inches in height by 3.5 inches in width, dating back to prehistoric times. This interesting discovery has been the cause of great controversy on the part of leading anthropologists and is now under discussion by the Academy of Science in Paris. This interesting piece, showing the influence of the Aurignac clan in its crude fabrication, may have been handed down for generations and buried with the body of this ancient queen, or perhaps it may have been found by her nobles in the rich evidences of previous culture prevalent in these regions, and kept by her as a fetish or lucky charm, to find its resting place at last near the head of this mammoth sculpture. The tomb dates from the early part of the 3rd century, evidenced by gold coins embedded as ornaments in an interesting wooden bowl brought back by the expedition. The so-called Libyan Venus, together with a large collection of the other trophies of Tin Hinan's tomb, have been brought to the United States by Count de Prorock for exhibition and lecture purposes. In addition, 4 complete skeletons taken from other ancient but relatively less important tombs were uncovered and preserved. These are among the trophies of the expedition and are the first complete skeletons ever brought back from the Sahara for scientific study. Mr. Tyrrell is also bringing what is probably the largest and most complete private collection of ethnological Tuareg material in America. I wonder what the Tuaregs are. I got to look that up. The expedition suffered all the hardships of the desert, including bad weather, lack of food due to delays in previous planned camel transportation, sandstorms, tremendous heat in the day, and terrific cold at night. At one point, the cars of the expedition became separated and were thought lost for many hours. The Franco-American expedition officially disbanded at Tugert on December something, but the Logan Sahara expedition, under the leadership of Alonzo Pond and accompanied by Maurice Ryegrass, separated from the Franco-American group at Insula, from which point they will work west and north by camel, and further and special archaeological and ethnographic research. Points visited by these expeditions during their absence from civilization included Oargia, Hasenefel, Insula, Merjuma, and I'm totally slaying these words, but you can read that. It's right there. The work of the Franco-American expedition has undoubtedly opened the Sahara to further research and study, for on every hand were evidences of a previous civilization of a high order. Very interesting. Okay, and here we go. Second and last article for today. Pre-glacial giant bones are found. Those of Europeans of 20,000 years ago, says expert. A wonderful drama of prehistory, as rich in surprise and as illuminating as that which was unfolded 2 years ago in the Valley of the Kings by the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun, is heralded by Sir Arthur Keith, FRS, one of the most eminent living authorities on primitive man. In an introductory article published recently in the London Illustrated News regarding discoveries in Moravia and Czechoslovakia. The greatest treasure house of relics of ancient man yet known has been unearthed by Dr. Katie Absalon, curator of the Government Museum in Brunn, the capital of Moravia in Czechoslovakia, writes John L. Baldiston in the New York World. A great settlement of prehistoric hunters of mammoths with bigger brains than the men of today, who lived between 20,000 and 30,000 years ago, when the whole of northern Europe was covered by ice, has been found. A small village almost 100 miles from Vienna is the scene of the finds, which were uncovered by the cutting of deep trenches for a brick company in deposits of fine silt known as loess, produced through long periods of glaciation. This silt lies at a depth of 65 feet and at the foot of a cliff or rock shelter where the ancient community of mammoth hunters lived before the glaciers came and covered the whole country to a depth of hundreds of feet with ice. The most extraordinary discovery, unlike anything ever met before, is the family tomb containing 20 skeletons, 12 adults and 8 children, one of the latter wearing a beautiful necklace. Around this oval tomb, 13 feet long and 7.5 feet wide, is a wall of enormous mammoth bones. One side of the tomb is protected by the shoulder blades of mammoths set upright and forming a palisade. The other side has a row of the lower jaws of mammoths, while covering the skeletons was a layer of stones designed to protect the dead against beasts of prey. To describe the stone implements of these ancient men, Dr. Abelson has thousands at his disposal. The places in which this community lived and made its hearths abound with the bones and teeth of the mammoth. There was a pile of 13 tusks stored for future use, and there was a heap of wolf skulls broken open so that the brains might be extracted. Everywhere there were bones split for the marrow. Finished weapons worked in ivory and bone were found in great numbers. There is an infinite variety of bone utensils and implements for domestic use, as well as works of art and toys of a high type of workmanship. Dr. Keith, studying casts of 2 of the skulls brought to London, finds they were pure European and believes they were direct ancestors of men living today in Western and Northern Europe. The skulls, one of a man, the other of a woman, show larger brain cavity than that of modern man. The brain capacity of the man's skull, Keith states, is 1,578 cubic centimeters, 100 cubic centimeters more than that of the average modern Englishman. Describing this skull further, Keith says, the peculiarity of this ancient race of hunters lies in the extent of its forward projecting giabella above the root of the nose. The nose itself and the front part of the jaws and chin stand forward in front of the ear passages a half-inch more than is usual in the profile of the modern Englishman's face, and a quarter-inch more than is usual in the profile of the Australian aborigine, yet owing to the forward position of the forehead, there is no evident muzzle, no prognathism, or projection of the jaws in this man. So yeah, interesting that 20 to 30,000 years ago, can you imagine living in a cave that had a wall of mammoth tusks and they were eating, you know, around these wolf skulls that were broken open for the brains, and they had all these beautiful, high type of workmanship, works of arts and toys, and yeah, our ancestors weren't stupid. So here you go, another few more articles